6 for me.
Folks, we are back. Our 1K here at Game Kastle in Austin, Texas. We had about 30 players show up. We did 5 Swiss rounds, cut to the top 8. We are now in the semifinals, the top 4 playing for a share of that $1,000. So I'm Liam from the Illumiteers. I'm joined here in the booth right now with Aaron Rubin. Aaron, how are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, excited to see this game play out. We've got Blue here, who was in the feature match last round, playing Emerald Steel, and Matt playing Blue Red. So these are kind of the two titans of the format, you might say. And here they are going head to head, and really excited to see how it plays out.
No, Titans is right. I think in every competitive event, every major event we've seen, these two decks are well represented, either 1 and 2 or vice versa. Yeah, it'll be great to see how they do here. I will say Matt is off to kind of the textbook start for this deck with a popsicle on turn 1, followed by a 1 jump ahead on turn 2, allowing him to ramp. And we're all seeing a very different opening from Blue here than we normally see from these Emerald Steel decks.
Yes, we are not seeing a turn 2 Bucky, and no turn 1 play, no turn 2 Bucky, and we're opting for Ursula instead of Diablo on turn 3. So definitely not a traditional start. But if he's able to utilize Ursula to double sing some powerful 3-cost songs, it might be, good enough to keep him in the game.
Yeah, I will say, able to get that Flavisham off there on turn 3 with the ramp, it really is going to help the Ruby Sapphire deck keep things going as Blue tries to put pressure on his hand. Although, again, without that Bucky on the board, it's really hard to start doing that here in the early game. This Ruby Sapphire deck is a deck that's generally trying to get to the end game to build an end game engine that'll allow him to close out the game pretty quickly. So getting to turn 7, 8, 9, where some of those, or particularly turn 6 and 7, where those removal options open up for the Ruby Sapphire deck is really critical. And sometimes it's hard against a deck that's putting pressure on your hand to build up that ink while saving those cards that you need for those turns. But in this instance, Blue not able to put that hand pressure on, and then able to utilize Hiram to draw 2 cards off that popsicle is really going to help Matt propel himself into the end game.
Yes, Flavisham, in my opinion, is the most key card in this matchup from the Ruby Sapphire side. Just being able to draw 2 cards off of the popsicles or the ice blocks if necessary. It undoes 2 Bucky activations, right? So that's very big in terms of allowing them to get to the ink to exact their game plan of, big Sisu empowered sibling, Tamatoa, Maleficent monstrous dragon. So some very expensive cards in this deck.
Absolutely. I was going to say, getting that third character in play finally makes Strength of a Raging Fire, being double sung by Ursula, able to remove that Flavisham. So that's something Blue's happy to do, is get that card draw engine off the board. You just talked about how important it is. So getting one of them into the discard pile probably feels pretty good at this point.
Yeah, so then the next question here is, Matt's sitting at 6 ink and has not inked for the turn. Is if there's a Be Prepared, it doesn't look like there is right now. So that's definitely good news for Blue.
Yeah, Beast Tragic Hero, just a fantastic card. Probably one of the better cards in the game, but that 3 strength making it susceptible to Madame Medusa. In fact, I've seen, recently in some decks, Beast had kind of fallen out of favor because it is so vulnerable to Madame Medusa, and then perhaps a Sisu with an ice block, or a Brawl with an ice block. So here's a perfect example of why 3 in the stat line just doesn't feel as good as it used to after Madame Medusa was introduced to the game, taking that Beast off the board. We do see the Floodborn Diablo come in. Unfortunately for Blue, no Bucky to trigger there. But Blue having not many cards in hand at this point, just the Tinkerbell, I think, is sitting off to the side there. So Diablo perhaps able to get some card draw going will feel pretty good.
And Matt sitting over here with basically a full grip of cards. You would assume he's firmly in the driver's seat from this point.
Yeah, and that Sisu coming down, banishing all opposing characters with 2 or less strength, and clearing the board there. We do have a Let the Storm Rage On played here. do some damage, draw a card, and then I think we still have that Tinkerbell there.
Yeah, so we see blue elect to put the 2 damage on the Sisu rather than the Madame Medusa because the Tinkerbell effect activation is going to, put that 4th damage already on the Medusa. So electing to spread the love.
And then, of course, drawing into another Strength of Raging Fire will allow him to clear up that Sisu. But instead, knowing that's possibly coming, the Popsicle coming down, not going to stick around for Flavisham fodder, but going to be used to heal up that Sisu. Matt probably using that to push the lore total, or perhaps look for a lucky dime here.
Yeah, and without the Emerald Steel deck, discarding the Matt's hand down, it's going to be really tough because one of their most efficient answers to the Tamatoa is we don't talk about Bruno bouncing it back to their hand and discarding it as it was the only card. But here there's really no hard exact answers to the Tamatoa.
No, that's a fantastic point because as we talked about earlier in the day, steel has a lot of removal, but it's all damage-based removal. So anything with a high level of willpower, for example, an 8 willpower Tamatoa, just becomes, it's a lot to ask for steel removal to deal with it without 2 or 3 cards. And Matt, really here, I mean, this is the engine that you want to get going. You've now drawn into the Flavisham, so Tamatoa can pull items back from the inkwell, give you a Popsicle, which will allow you to draw a card. Then you can immediately banish with the Flavisham, draw another 2 cards. And so we're seeing the engine in full swing here. An Ice Block coming down for a little extra item insurance, a full group of cards. Matt's really in the driver's seat. All he's missing now is that lucky dime.
That's exactly what I would assume Matt is looking for, as he has controlled the board. He's really looking to close out the game as quickly as he can. The best way to do that is a lucky dime. The Tamatoa, just by himself is also capable of closing out the game relatively quickly if he just, plays 3 couple items next turn to increase that lore count.
And here, blue electing to send Tinkerbell into that Sisu, get that 3 lore off the board, and when Sisu's banished, assigning that 2 damage from Tinkerbell to the Tamatoa, chipping it down a little bit, but it does put it within striking distance of that Hercules, I believe. So there, now a choice for Matt, choosing to quest with Tamatoa makes it vulnerable. Of course, you can pull back the Popsicle, do a little healing on the Tamatoa, which is what we might see here. But yeah, Hercules with 6 strength, it does threaten that Tamatoa a little bit.
Hercules is a really interesting inclusion in this deck. It's not something that I've typically seen in the Emerald Steel deck, but I would imagine it to be a very powerful answer in the mirror matches. Just having that resist 2. Not looking so great against these Ruby cards, though.
Yeah, resist is a fantastic stat. Makes you reduces a little bit of damage, but when you have Maleficent coming down and dealing Dragon Fire, banishing you outright, the resist doesn't do you much good. So Matt with the answer there, getting rid of that Hercules, freeing up his Tamatoa to quest with impunity, and making full use of it there.
Yeah, it looks like if Matt doesn't have the lucky dime, I think he's just going to put himself into a position to close out the game next turn with questing power, and second Tamatoa is a great way to do that.
Yeah, side of the board looking a little crabby there. 2 Tamatoa is definitely better than 1, and blue choosing to scoop, just not having the mass removal necessary to deal with that now. So really interesting matchup. As you said right up front, Aaron, these are really the 2 titans of the format right now. I do think either one of these decks can take it at this point, but blue really needs to put pressure on Matt's hand as early as possible to prevent him from building up to 6 and 7 lore when a lot of those high cost cards he has become available.
Yeah, so in my opinion, it is absolutely mission critical for blue to have the Bucky on turn 2, for him to have a chance in this matchup. The Ruby Sapphire deck just has so much ramping power, and a lot of their cards, like How Far I'll Go, it ramps and replaces itself. Flavisham, just drawing 2 cards back. So so much consistency and so much card draw velocity and ramp velocity in this deck that it's going to do its thing very consistently. And unless blue can interact with that and stifle that development, Ruby Sapphire is just going to take over the game, and that's kind of what we saw last game play out.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, it's such a pleasure having you here in the booth. I told everybody when you sat down who's watching on Twitch here that they were in for a treat having you in the booth here. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, first time on the booth. You know, a little nervous about it, but it's been a lot of fun. So, thanks for having me, and I hope all the viewers are enjoying it.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure being here. It's also a pleasure, not casting by yourself. It's a little bit more fun. But let's see what Blue has here. Let's see if we have that Bucky. I don't see it. We do have the Diablo, as well as the shift target for the Diablo. So that line is open. It looks like we're going to keep those cards. Oh, no.
No, so he's electing to keep an action so that he can discard it to the shift Diablo, which I do agree with. So, and then he's going to go ahead and look for the Bucky on the rest.
We may have gone it there. I'm not quite sure. It's hard to see foil sometimes, and I think I may have seen a foil Bucky, but we'll know for sure in a moment. Blue being on the play. There it is.
There it is. Okay.
So we do have the opening. We also have, for an extra bit of fun, we have the Let the Storm Rage On that we can sing immediately. I don't know that we'll have a target for it, but nevertheless, it's there.
Yeah, that's not the card you're hoping to see in this particular matchup, as the Ruby Sapphire is not going to be presenting many threats for you to use it on.
You know, I did see a build in Atlanta run the Frenemy Sisu package, but I don't know that that's the right play for this deck.
As I played Ruby Sapphire in Chicago and took it to its top 64 finish, and I did toy around with that, and I ultimately found that it was, reducing the overall consistency and velocity of my deck, and that's a great way to utilize Let the Storm Rage On in this matchup is just discard it to shift your Diablo. So what otherwise would have been an uninkable card just rotting away in Blue's hand, he's able to use it to get this Diablo on the board.
Yeah, I think eventually it would have been used to damage something just to draw that card off of anyway. So Matt, though, following his game plan as well with a Popsicle in turn one, looks like a couple one jump ahead discarded to the Diablo, a second one jump ahead though available to ramp into turn 4. And I haven't seen the hand yet, but hopefully we have a Flavisham here because you're going to need it with 2 Buckies on the board.
Yeah, double Bucky definitely very powerful, but a single Flavisham can undo all of the damage that those Bucky activations are doing every turn. So definitely something that can keep him in this game.
Well, let's hope that he, if you're rooting for Matt, you're hoping that he finds one here. Not playing it immediately indicates that we don't have it. Instead, develop your brain, looking at the top 2 cards, hoping to find it. I think we're sending a Be Prepared there to the bottom of the deck, a card that he wants to have, but I think he has one in hand anyway. But it's uninkable, and so there it goes. Develop Brain Brawl coming down, removing the Diablo.
That is crucial, having that answer to the Diablo immediately, just stopping that card draw. So now, even though Blue is going to continue to attack Matt's hand, he's not going to be simultaneously drawing cards and keeping the velocity going on his side.
Speaking of nothing, I don't have a segue for this. Aladdin coming down, and now Aladdin is a card. I think it's played for 2 reasons. The biggest reason is because it fills a 3-drop Floodborn spot, and it is inkable. But the other nice thing about it is you can banish items when it quests. It's not helpful in a ton of matchups, but in this matchup here, where Matt's hoping to keep items on the board to use for Flavisham fodder, that Aladdin presents a bit of a problem. Now along came Zeus.
So Blue electing to remove the Maui rather than deploying a Floodborn to get the last card out of Matt's hand, and it was a Madame Medusa, so Matt just drawing ink for the turn is able to play that. Really nice for him.
Yeah, but now Matt, I think, is top decking now, and without an item on the board. It's kind of a bummer because there it is. Without an item on the board, your best card draw you can't activate, but Matt being forced to play it to the board, even though it makes it vulnerable, because otherwise it's susceptible to the Bucky discard that's likely coming or available to Blue this turn.
Still a great draw for Matt. It's good. Any item now is going to represent a draw 2, which is going to be great for Matt to kind of take over the game. Blue does not have a lot going for him on his side of the board, so he's not able to close out the game at any reasonable speed. So Matt's going to have a lot of draw steps, and if he can hit an item, he's right back in the game.
That's true. I do think Blue is fairly well positioned if he can draw into a Beast Tragic Hero, perhaps. Something that'll allow him to get some card draw going. And he is sitting with a card advantage, so can build his board a little bit. But here we have that. We don't talk about Bruno, you mentioned earlier. We had an odd and even situation. Matt discarding a Sisu there. Kind of painful. An answer to the Bucky and any other low-cost characters that came out. So not super happy about that. But probably the Sisu rather than the Flavisham, right?
If I were blue, I would be very happy that the Sisu was discarded rather than the Flavisham.
Really?
There.
Okay.
I mean, just having a 5/4 stat on the board that quests for 3, removing the Bucky from play, reducing the tax, and potentially had blue played any more characters this turn, clearing even more characters. Definitely would have, in my opinion, bought Matt more time than this Flavisham is.
That's true. It's a fair point. That's why you're the best. So here we have Hidden Cove coming out. A Hidden Cove, a card becoming a little bit more popular in the meta and sneaking into some of these green steel decks. What it enabled blue there to do is quest with the Bucky, and with the extra willpower that Hidden Cove gives him, making him not removable to the Flavisham. So Hidden Cove just gives your characters a little extra durability. What it also does against decks that are running Sisu and Brawl is it pushes some of your cards over the strength line necessary to utilize those cards. So in a deck with Sisu, for example, you can put one of your 2 statted characters, like a Diablo, for instance, onto the Hidden Cove and then make it not choosable or not targetable by cards like Bronze.
And we see a lot of action here as blue is able to use its removal to remove the Flavisham from the battlefield, and Matt in turn top decking a Maui and removing the Bucky from blue's side of the field. So definitely a lot of back and forth here.
That definitely feels good. The Maui not sticking around to remove the Hidden Cove, but top decking into a Tamatoa, which I think does feel good, pulling back the Popsicle, but not enough ink to play the Popsicle this turn, unfortunately. But without the Bucky on the board, it removes that discard threat, so Matt's hoping to hang on to it into the next turn.
It'll be interesting to note that because the Diablo is exerted, when these Popsicles will be drawing cards for Matt. Oh, never mind. They will not be drawing cards for blue.
Medusa. We talked about how it pushes the stat lines higher and it moves it higher, so it's out of the range of Sisu, but still within range of Madame Medusa. So Madame Medusa getting rid of that 3-strength Diablo, and now Matt able to play the Popsicle and draw a card without giving blue an extra card, which feels pretty good.
Yeah, and we do see Matt electing to get the Lucky Dime out of his discard pile rather than sacrificing the Popsicle and getting it back. So electing to, start looking to close out this game rather than to continue to draw cards.
Yeah, it's fun watching these Ruby Sapphire decks because in order to close out the game and get the engine going, there comes a turn where you almost have to take an entire turn off to play that Lucky Dime. And you really watch these players try to gauge when it's that moment where they can, instead of developing the characters on their board or perhaps a working card draw, just take the turn off, get the dime on the board. But then that represents a threat for the rest of the game.
It's definitely all about picking the right window. And I would say in this matchup, the window is definitely after you've completely stabilized the opponent's board. There are other matchups where you might actually prefer to play the Lucky Dime first, but I think this is one where you just want to be as proactive as possible and then Dime as the very last thing you do to end the game.
Matt playing a Grandma Tala there, and very on flavor, getting 2 copies of How Far I'll Go to pick from. Mm-hmm. He picked number 2. I sent the other one to the bottom of the deck, and now playing it, and really at this point able to look at the top 6 cards of his deck, and pick several of them to keep. So really digging and looking for specific answers.
I was just watching Moana this morning before this tournament started, and watching this deck, I just never even thought about how many Moana specific cards there are here. You have How Far I'll Go, you've got Talas, you've got Tamatoa. A very thematic deck.
That's true. It's one of the things I love about this game. We should rename it after Moana. There's some name that so shiny, maybe. I don't know. But man, the engine in full swing. We know we have the dime in hand. We have the Tamatoa. We have items available. Blue though, playing a number of cards which deal damage across the board. Not only a Grab Your Swords, but a Tinkerbell. So collectively dealing 3 damage to everything.
The set 1 classic Tink Grab Your Swords to deal 3 damage to everything, and then also having the ink to move the Tinkerbell over to the Cove.
It's just that much better. So now, I mean, what that does too, that puts Tinkerbell at 5 strength. With Tamatoa sitting with 5 damage on it, it now makes Tamatoa able to be removed by the Tinkerbell, unless Matt decides to remove the Hidden Cove and get rid of that extra bit of strength, which he chooses to do.
And then following up with the Madame Medusa is just a very powerful turn here. And Matt will elect to heal his Tamatoa and keep it around from the steel damage-based removal.
Yeah, losing the Beast Tragic Hero and the card draw that represents definitely doesn't feel good. Matt, it seemed like it kind of swung the board a little bit back in his favor, but Matt, with all the card draw, able to find the answers he needs to get rid of those some of those cards. And now Tinkerbell into Madame Medusa, sending 2 damage to the other Madame Medusa after it banishes that character. And it's back over to Matt with his sizable Inkwell. Let's see what he elects to do here.
And it looks like it's finally time to play that dime. Tamatoa is going to get back Popsicle, draw another card, and most likely we're going to see an activation of this dime here.
Tamatoa, of course, getting an extra lore for every item in play. With 2 items in play, Tamatoa has 3 lore, and with that activation, nailed it, Aaron, getting 3 lore off the Tamatoa, pushing Matt to 9. And you know, this is the engine in full swing. I think, you know, ideally you'd like to have a Flavisham out there making use of Popsicles as they're pulled back, but the Tamatoa item Lucky Dime engine is really what this deck is pushing towards.
And we even see Matt, you know, challenge the Tinkerbell here with his Madame Medusa, and that's to protect his Tamatoa from being challenged by both the Hercules and the Tinkerbell. So really valuing this Tamatoa here.
And Blue responds with his opening combo, but here in the later game with a Bucky followed by a Diablo, forcing Matt to discard a card, and then perhaps setting up some card draw in successive turns unless Matt wants to has a way to deal with that Diablo as it's exerted. And a couple of items coming down. We have Ice Block and Fishbone Quill doing a few things. I mean, I think Matt is somewhat interested in their ability, but he's more interested in getting items on the board that'll push Tamatoa's lore total a little bit higher.
Yes, Matt is definitely looking to close out this game. And if I see correctly, he might have another Tamatoa in his hand, meaning even if Blue is able to deal with this one, he'll be able to play another one on the next turn and activate the dime. So Blue's going to need to attack Matt's hand and as well as deal with the Tamatoa on board.
Well, we've done one of those things now. It's that Tamatoa, but as you suggested, anything with 2 lore at this point is immediately usable by the dime, and if he does have that Tamatoa, then that will be game. Unless Blue has a way to really attack the hand, he doesn't. So let's see if Matt has the Tamatoa. He does, activating the dime, pushing him up to, 20-something lore, and that is game. There's the handshake.
Yeah, very well played by both sides. Blue really got to, you know, enact his game plan, getting Matt down to 0 cards, but ultimately finding that Tamatoa, bringing him back into that game.
Yeah, fantastic finish, and this is what Ruby Sapphire does, yeah, I mean, that's what Ruby Sapphire does.
Yeah.
Do you think? I know Emerald Steel is. It was really popular coming into this meta. Do you think the prevalence of Ruby Sapphire has to do with the prevalence of Emerald Steel?
Yes, I do. You know, from my testing going into Chicago, I found the Ruby Sapphire matchup to be very favorable into Emerald Steel, and you know, we kind of saw that play out right here. So if, you know, a lot of people are expecting a lot of Emerald Steel in the field, this will be a very natural counter to that. And, you know, then we get into a little bit of rock, paper, scissors action where that opens the door for decks like, not red, purple, Ruby Amethyst.
Ruby Amethyst, yeah.
Ruby Amethyst to the, you know, which counters the Ruby Sapphire. Sorry about that. But, you know, Ruby Amethyst struggles against Emerald Steel. So then that's kind of a summary of the current format we're looking at right now.
Rock, paper, scissors with a spattering of other decks. Well, gosh, well that was the semifinals. I believe we're bringing you the finals next. After a little bit, we are going to take a break. Before I do that, I want to say thanks again to Aaron for joining me in this match. You can follow Aaron at Lorcana Bro on most social media platforms, but Twitch, Twitter. How else can people follow you?
Right now it's going to be mostly Twitter and Discord. I'm not without an online client. I'm not currently streaming right now.
You should follow him anyway, and then when
Yes.
you do eventually, then you're already set to go.
For sure. I'm also on YouTube at Lorcana Bro. I'm not producing any additional content right now. I'm kind of reevaluating my plan and what I want to do with that channel. But yeah, YouTube, Discord, and Twitter are probably the best places to follow me.
Well, and I highly recommend you do. Very talented player and very approachable. So thanks again for joining me, Aaron. And thanks to Game Kastle for hosting this 1K tournament here in Austin, Texas. And thank you to 20 Lore Pro, a fantastic group of folks, a community. They're on Discord, and they're all about supporting players, helping you get better, and then bringing you fantastic tournament coverage like this. So a fantastic stream today, and Aaron and I are just tickled to be a part of it. And lastly, thanks to you all who are watching right now for listening to us talk, for being here, watching Lorcana with us. We will bring you the finals here shortly, so don't go anywhere.